Family time in the outdoors promised to be pleasant until it turned into an unpleasant surprise. Having prepaid for a barbecue at her mother-in-law's country house, the young family with children arrived for a relaxing weekend, only to be met with a cold reception. At the table already sat the husband's ex, and the mother-in-law greeted her daughter-in-law with harsh words. "There's no room, go home with your little brats, and you, son, come on over." When her husband obediently headed to the table, the woman realized it was time to take matters into her own hands. Betty's call caught Sarah in the middle of a deep cleaning session. The phone vibrated obnoxiously, displaying a name that always made Sarah tense involuntarily. She wiped the sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand and took a deep breath before answering. "Hello, Betty, hi. Hello, my dear daughter-in-law." Her mother-in-law's voice dripped with honey, a sure sign of an impending storm. "How are my grandchildren doing?" "They're fine, thank you. Mia is drawing, Dave is playing with his building blocks." Sarah glanced automatically at the children, peacefully occupied in their room. "That's good to hear. So, why am I calling?" Betty paused. "May holidays are coming, and our country house is just sitting there unused. It would be a shame not to take advantage of the nice weather. We'll grill some barbecue, get some fresh air." Sarah hesitated. After 6 years of life with Marcus, she could predict the outcome of any family event from her mother-in-law's intonation. Usually, every gathering ended the same way: Sarah in tears, Marcus confused, and Betty surrounded by an aura of self-satisfaction. "And who else will be there?" Sarah asked cautiously. "The usual family circle. My sister Rachel with her husband. A couple of good friends." Her mother-in-law spoke vaguely, which made Sarah uneasy. "I've already told Marcus, and he approved the idea." "Of course he did. Marcus always approved anything his mother suggested. He was the classic mama's boy, 33, tall, attractive, successful in IT, yet in his mother's presence, he transformed into an obedient child, ready to fulfill any whim." "All right," Sarah surrendered, realizing arguing was pointless. "When are you planning this?" "This Saturday." "Oh, and I almost forgot," Betty added casually, as if in passing. "We'll all chip in for groceries. Everything fair. $1,000 from you." "1,000?" Sarah choked on her own breath. "But last time it was only $500 per family." "Oh, Sarah, as if you don't know what's happening with prices," her mother-in-law exclaimed. "Meat has gone up, and you have 2 kids. They eat for 4. The others chip in $500 each because they have no kids. It's all fair." Sarah gripped the phone, feeling the familiar irritation rising inside her. Every time money came up, her mother-in-law expertly twisted the situation until Sarah felt ashamed simply for feeding, breathing, and existing with her children. "All right, I'll give the money through Marcus," she conceded. "Good girl," Betty approved. "And chop some salads, don't forget. Last time your Olivier was almost edible. And the pie, don't forget the apple one. Marcus loved it as a kid when I baked it." After the call, Sarah sank onto a stool and buried her face in her hands. For 6 years she had tried to please this woman, and still kept failing. She remembered meeting Marcus at the office center where she worked as a secretary. He had come in to get an ID badge. They struck up a conversation, and 6 months later he proposed. A proposal that came with Betty as part of the package. Her first meeting with her mother-in-law should have warned her. "So tiny," Betty had said then, appraising Sarah critically. "Narrow hips, will you be able to give birth?" Sarah had managed. Twice. But giving birth to grandchildren did nothing to melt her mother-in-law's icy heart. Betty constantly compared Sarah to Tiffany, Marcus's first love, who had left him for a modeling career. Tiffany could cook. Tiffany never raised her voice. Tiffany always looked like she belonged on a magazine cover. Like an invisible ghost, Marcus's ex-girlfriend constantly lingered in their lives. "Mom, look what I drew." Mia, a blonde mini version of her father, ran up to Sarah, waving a piece of paper. Sarah looked at the drawing, a bright sun, green grass, and 4 figures holding hands, Mom, Dad, and 2 children. "That's us at Grandma's country house," the girl proudly explained. "I'll give it to her, and Grandma will be happy." Sarah's heart tightened. Despite her mother-in-law's constant efforts, she had never turned the children against their grandmother. Even if Betty considered her grandchildren a burden, Sarah made sure they never felt it. "Of course, sweetie, Grandma will be happy," Sarah lied, stroking her daughter's head. A key turned in the door, and footsteps sounded in the hallway. Marcus had returned from work, tall, fit, wearing an expensive suit and his signature laptop backpack. To outsiders, he seemed like the perfect husband. Sarah, however, knew another side of him, indecisive, weak-willed, ready to retreat into silence at the slightest conflict. "Daddy." The children squealed, rushing to hug his legs. "Hello, champions." Marcus scooped both up, spinning them around, triggering a new wave of delighted squeals. Sarah watched with a sad smile. Marcus was a good father when not under his mother's influence. He loved the children, played with them willingly, read bedtime stories. But as soon as Betty appeared, he seemed to forget his role, turning into her obedient son. "Your mom called," Sarah said after the children ran off to their room. "She's inviting us to the country house for a barbecue on Saturday. $1,000 for groceries." Marcus grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge and took a sip. "Yes, she mentioned it. Meat has gone up, and our kids eat more." "I know. I said I'd give the money through you." "All right," Marcus nodded. "Mom also asked you to make salads and bake a pie. And I know that too." Sarah felt irritation bubbling inside. "It's amazing she even spoke to me instead of passing everything through you." Marcus frowned. "Sarah, let's not start. Mom just wants to get the family together. She cares about us." Of course Sarah turned away, hiding her expression. "I'll bake the pie, make the salads, and dress the kids in their best outfits, as always." On Friday evening, Sarah stood in the kitchen chopping vegetables for the salads. An apple pie, fragrant with cinnamon and vanilla, already sat on the table. The $1,000, withdrawn from her personal account because Marcus had forgotten to stop by the ATM, lay in an envelope on the hallway shelf. "Mom, will Grandma like my drawing?" Mia asked, sitting at the table coloring a new picture. "Of course, sweetie," Sarah replied automatically, avoiding her daughter's gaze. "Then why does Grandma never come to visit us?" The girl persisted. "Grandma Alice comes every week and brings cookies." Sarah froze for a moment, knife in hand. What could she tell her child? That Betty considered their apartment a cramped closet? That she refused to climb 5 flights of stairs without an elevator? Or simply that she didn't want to spend time with her grandchildren if there were no spectators ready to admire her selfless grandmotherly love? "Grandma's legs hurt. It's hard for her to climb the stairs," Sarah improvised. "That's why we go to visit her." "But Uncle Robert says Grandma's just a grumpy old lady," Dave suddenly blurted out, building a tower of blocks on the floor. "Dave!" Sarah exclaimed. "Who's Uncle Robert?" "Daddy's friend who came last time," the boy explained. "He said your mom like a dinosaur. And that it's time to separate from her." "Tyrannosaurus," Sarah corrected automatically. "And don't repeat adult conversations." She smiled inwardly. So it wasn't just her who saw the problem. Marcus's friends noticed the unhealthy bond between him and his mother too. Only Marcus himself seemed oblivious. That evening, after putting the children to bed, Sarah began sorting their wardrobe, choosing outfits for the next day's trip. Betty always paid attention to how her grandchildren were dressed. Bought this at a thrift store again, she would frown, examining new clothes she deemed insufficiently expensive. Marcus, did you remember the money for Mom? Sarah asked when her husband entered the room. Yes, I took the envelope, he said, sitting on the edge of the bed. You know, I'm so glad we're all going tomorrow. Maybe you'll finally find common ground with Mom. I've been trying for 6 years, and it never works, Sarah said with a sad smile. You just need to try to understand her, Marcus shrugged. She raised me alone after my father died. Of course, she's overprotective, but it's out of love. She doesn't protect, she controls, Sarah murmured. And it's not love, it's possessiveness. Here we go, Marcus frowned. You just don't know her like I do. Mom wants what's best. Of course. Sarah turned away, realizing the conversation was pointless. Let's sleep. We have to get up early tomorrow. That night, she dreamed of her mother-in-law's country house. An old but sturdy home with a spacious porch, where happy people sat around a table. At the head sat Betty, in a crown. Sarah stood at the entrance, but an invisible force kept her from entering. She woke with a sense of unease that stayed with her until morning. Saturday morning dawned sunny and warm. Sarah woke up before everyone else. She packed the salads into containers, carefully wrapped the pie, and gathered a bag with everything the children might need, from sunscreen to spare clothes. Experience had taught her that her mother-in-law's country house never had anything essential for the kids, despite Betty's constant assurances that she had prepared everything for the grandchildren. When the family loaded into the car, everyone was in high spirits. Mia clutched the envelope with her drawing for Grandma. Dave played with his new toy car. Marcus whistled behind the wheel. Sarah tried to suppress her anxiety, telling herself that maybe this time everything would be different. Maybe today would be the day Betty finally accepted her as part of the family. The country village greeted them with the scent of blooming apple trees and the hum of bees. As they approached the familiar gate, Sarah noticed a silver car parked nearby. Whose car is that? She asked her husband. Do you know who else is coming? Marcus shrugged, but Sarah noticed the tension in his posture. No idea. Probably one of Mom's friends. As they stepped out of the car, Sarah clearly heard female laughter coming from the porch. A laughter that felt strangely familiar. She took the children by the hands and started toward the house while Marcus unloaded the car. Voices, clinking glasses, and the smell of sizzling meat drifted from the porch. The celebration had already started without them. Sarah climbed the steps, holding her neatly dressed children's hands, and froze at the doorway. About 8 people sat at the table. Betty presided at the head. Next to her sat her sister with her husband, some strangers Sarah didn't recognize, and Tiffany. The very Tiffany, Marcus's ex-girlfriend, whom Betty brought up at every opportunity. Tall, blonde, model-like, wearing a tight dress with a deep neckline. She was animatedly telling a story, and everyone listened with admiration. Seeing Sarah with the children, Betty rose from her seat. Her gaze swept over the grandchildren, lingered on Sarah, and her lips curved into a disapproving grimace. Well, here you are, she said in a tone that made it clear they were not expected at all. And where's Marcus? He's getting the bags, Sarah replied, feeling the ground slip beneath her feet. Hello, everyone. Grandma. Mia tore her hand from her mother's and ran to Betty with her drawing. Look what I made for you. Betty didn't even glance at the offered paper. Her attention shifted to Marcus as he approached. Her face lit up. Son, come on over, we've been waiting for you. And then she said the phrase that turned Sarah's world upside down. There's no room. Go home with your little brats, and you, son, come on over. Betty flung the door wide for her son, deliberately ignoring her daughter-in-law and grandchildren. All the guests fell silent, watching the scene unfold. Tiffany smiled and waved at Marcus, inviting him to sit beside her. Marcus froze, shifting his gaze from his wife to his mother. A flicker of something resembling shame passed through his eyes, but only for a moment. He looked at his wife, at the children, then silently grabbed the bag of supplies, brushed past Mia, who was holding out her drawing, stepped around Dave, shrugged, and calmly walked to the table where Tiffany was already waiting with a glass of wine. Mia stared at her drawing in confusion. Dave clutched his mother's skirt tightly. Sarah stood frozen, unable to move, feeling something inside her snap. The invisible thread that had tied her to this family for so many years had been severed. At that moment, something clicked in Sarah's mind. 6 years of humiliation, disapproving sighs, comparisons to an ex-lover. $1,000 for steaks now eaten by the former girlfriend. A husband who had ignored his own children. "Come on, kids," Sarah said quietly, taking their hands. "We're going home." The children's eyes looked at her in confusion and disbelief. Mia gripped her crumpled drawing tightly, her lower lip trembling. Dave, not fully understanding, simply held onto his mother's hand, sensing the tension in the air. "What about the barbecue?" Mia asked softly. "Daddy will stay." Sarah swallowed the lump in her throat. "How do you explain to a 5-year-old what just happened? How do you tell her that her father chose a barbecue and his former lover over his own family?" "Daddy has important business with Grandma," she forced out. "We'll go to the park and ride the carousels. It'll be fun." The children obediently headed to the car, but Mia kept glancing back at the house where her father remained. Sarah's heart ached, for the children, for herself, for 6 years given to a family that crumbled in seconds. Once the children were in the car, Sarah turned on cartoons on the tablet. They watched with blank faces, still processing the recent scene. "Sit quietly, I'll be right back," Sarah said, trying to keep her voice calm. Slamming the car door, she looked around. Behind the summer house, a small vegetable garden began, separated from the neighboring properties by an old, partially rotted fence. Sarah remembered that there was a hole in the fence. She and Marcus had once gone through it to pick wild strawberries in the forest. After walking a few meters along the path, Sarah found the gap and slipped through it. Her perfectly ironed skirt got dirty, but at the moment, that was the least of her problems. She crept around the house and approached the veranda, from which voices and laughter could be heard. "Can you believe it? He didn't even resist," Betty was saying. "I always knew that upstart wasn't right for my boy. But you, Tiffany, are a whole different story. You're exaggerating my virtues, Betty." Tiffany's voice was sweet, but with a note of insincerity that her mother-in-law probably didn't notice. "I'm just happy to see Marcus again. We haven't talked in so long. And you could have been married for 7 years by now," the mother-in-law exclaimed. "And there would be no little brats, always yelling and breaking everything." "Mom, don't start." Marcus's voice sounded uncertain. "Mia and Dave are good kids." Of course," Betty waved her off. "Let's just toast to reunions, to everything going back to the way it was." The clinking of glasses followed. Sarah cautiously peeked from around the corner. The table was overflowing with food, shashlik, salads, appetizers, expensive alcohol, all the things she had spent her $1,000 on. And among this feast, her husband, sitting next to Tiffany, who was gazing at him languidly from under long lashes. "Marcus, remember when we rode your friend's motorcycle?" Tiffany cooed. "What a sunset, what a sea." "Yes, I remember," Marcus smiled, but Sarah could see that it was a forced smile. "And remember when you proposed to me, and I said it was too soon?" Tiffany continued, placing her hand on Marcus's shoulder. "What a fool I was, letting such a man slip away." "You didn't miss out on anything, dear," Betty interjected. "My son is free." "Well, almost free. Just need to sort out some formalities." Marcus choked on his wine. "Mom, What are you talking about? I'm married, I have kids. So what? The mother-in-law snorted. Big deal. Get a divorce, and you're free as a bird. Tiffany is a successful model now. She has connections, money. You'd make a perfect couple. And the kids? Well, you can see them on weekends, if you want. Sarah felt a boiling rage inside her. This woman was openly planning her son's divorce, right at the holiday table. And Marcus, he said nothing, didn't object, didn't get up or leave. He sat with his head down like a naughty boy while the fate of his family was being decided. On the table was a basin of cold water, apparently for chilling drinks. Near the grill lay a tray of hot, freshly cooked shashlik. By the sink was a bucket of murky liquid, probably leftover dishwater. The plan crystallized instantly. Sarah stepped decisively out of her hiding place and headed for the veranda. No one noticed her approach. They were all engrossed in conversation and food. She quietly climbed the steps, approached the table, and grabbed the basin of cold water. With one swift motion, she dumped it over her mother-in-law's head. Betty shrieked, jumping up, but Sarah had already grabbed the tray of shashlik and flung its contents straight into her stunned husband's face. The hot meat scattered in a fan, and a couple of pieces even landed in Tiffany's revealing neckline. Ah! Hot! Tiffany screamed, jumping up and trying to pull the meat out of her dress. Marcus froze with his mouth open. Fat from the shashlik dripped down his face. Betty, soaked and disheveled, resembled an enraged wet chicken. You! She gasped in fury, unable to find words. But Sarah was not finished. While everyone shouted and wiped themselves off, she, with a strength even she didn't know she had, overturned the table. Salads, wine, appetizers, all went flying to the floor. Her own apple pie, which she had spent the previous evening baking, crumbled, mixing with shards of broken dishes. The guests jumped up. Some screamed, some laughed, thinking it was some kind of prank. Sarah methodically stomped on the fallen food in her heels, smearing salads across the wooden veranda floor. You've lost your mind. Betty finally found her voice. Marcus, control your psycho wife. Marcus stepped toward Sarah, trying to grab her hand, but she spun around and slapped him with all her strength. The sound of the smack echoed across the veranda, silencing everyone. Marcus recoiled, clutching his cheek. His eyes widened in shock and surprise. Sarah, what are you? He began, but she cut him off. Shut up. Just shut up. Her voice rang with fury. 6 years. 6 years I've endured your mockery. I cooked, cleaned, gave you children. And you chose your mommy and her friend. Sarah, let's talk. Marcus tried to take control of the situation. Don't you dare call me that. She grabbed the bucket of dirty water and dumped it onto the already smoldering grill. A cloud of steam and smoke rose into the air, adding dramatic flair to the scene. And now, everyone listen. Sarah said loudly. She scanned the frozen guests with her gaze. I'm leaving forever. And I'm taking the kids. And you, she looked at Marcus and his mother, can live happily with your Tiffany if she agrees to put up with a mother-in-law like you. With that, she turned and walked quickly toward the gate. Behind her, Betty's screams echoed. You'll regret this. I'll sue you for property damage, for insults, for... Her mother-in-law's voice grew fainter as Sarah walked away. She trembled with adrenaline. Her heart pounded as if it could leap out of her chest. 6 years of accumulated resentment, humiliation, and pain poured out in a matter of minutes. Reaching the car, Sarah saw that the kids were still watching cartoons on the tablet. They looked up as their mother opened the door. Where's Dad? Dave asked. Dad will stay with Grandma, Sarah replied, trying to keep her voice calm. We're going home, and then we'll go to the park, like I promised. Why are your hands dirty? Observant Mia noticed. Sarah looked at her hands. They really were smeared with food. I was helping Grandma in the garden, she lied. I'll wipe them with a napkin. She got into the driver's seat, wiped her hands with wet wipes, and took a deep breath, trying to calm down. In the rearview mirror, she saw Marcus running out of the gate. He was looking around, apparently trying to find her. Sarah quickly started the car and drove off before he could notice them. At home, Sarah first sent the children to the bath. After the trip, they needed to wash up. While they splashed in warm water, playing with rubber ducks, she rushed to the bedroom, grabbed a large travel bag, and began feverishly packing, hers and the children's. Her thoughts were jumbled. Where to go? To her parents? They lived in another city, 6 hours away. To a friend? Nancy had her own 2 children. It was unlikely she could take in 3 more. A hotel? With what money? Her phone was exploding with calls. Marcus was clearly trying to reach her. Sarah silenced it and placed it face down. Mom, where are we going? Mia asked, standing in the bedroom doorway in her unicorn pajamas. Her hair was still damp from the bath. To the park, like I promised, Sarah forced herself to smile. Why are you packing? Are we going somewhere? Sarah crouched down and hugged her daughter. You know, sometimes adults need a little time apart. Dad and I need some space so we can be happy again later. Did you fight? Mia's eyes filled with tears. Because of Grandma? No, little one. No, Sarah hugged her daughter tighter. It just happened. Sometimes people can't be together, even if they really want to. Will Dad live with us? Dave came out of the bath, rubbing his eyes with his fist. Dad will come visit you, Sarah replied, trying not to cry. He'll play with you, take you for walks. Everything will be fine, I promise. An hour later, she was already calling a realtor who had once helped them find this apartment with Marcus. Paula, I urgently need to rent a place, Sarah said. Starting today, a 2-bedroom apartment, preferably furnished. Budget, she hesitated, calculating her finances. Budget up to $2,000. In this area? The realtor asked. No, Sarah shook her head, though the other couldn't see it. Better somewhere else. The farther, the better. Okay, I'll look at options and call you back, Paula promised. But I should warn you, it's harder with kids. Many owners are afraid. My kids are good, Sarah interrupted. And I'm willing to pay 2 months' deposit in advance. After the call, she glanced at the clock. Almost 6 in the evening. Marcus was supposed to return from the summer house any minute. She had to hurry. Kids, get dressed. Sarah commanded. We're going to visit Aunt Nancy. Hooray, to Carl. Dave cheered, thinking of Nancy's son, whom he loved to play with. Sarah quickly packed the essentials into her bag, grabbed documents, bank cards, and apartment keys. She placed them on the hallway table and gathered the children's toys, the plush bunny Mia couldn't sleep without, and Dave's toy cars. Just as they were standing in the doorway, ready to leave, the key clicked. Sarah froze. The door opened, and Marcus appeared in the doorway, disheveled, with a red mark from the slap on his cheek, smelling of alcohol. Dad! The children rushed to him. Marcus instinctively crouched to hug them, but his gaze was fixed on the bags in Sarah's hands, on her determined face. Where are you going? He asked. We're going to visit Aunt Nancy, Dave announced happily. Overnight stay. Marcus turned his gaze to his wife. Sarah straightened, trying to appear confident. Kids, wait for me in the elevator, she said. I'll be right there. Mia and Dave reluctantly stepped away from their father and left the apartment. When they were alone, Marcus broke the silence first. Sarah, I understand, you're upset. Upset? Sarah laughed bitterly. No, Marcus, I'm not upset. I'm liberated. For 6 years, I tried to be part of your family, endured humiliations from your mother. And all that time you were silent. You stood aside and watched as she destroyed me, our marriage, our family. And today, you made your choice. I didn't choose. Marcus raised his voice. You're making everything complicated. Mom just wanted. Shut up. Sarah felt a wave of anger rise within her again. Don't you dare justify her. You saw how she treated your children, how she refused even to look at me as drawing. And you did nothing. Marcus faltered. I was lost. I didn't know how to react. You're 33, Marcus, Sarah said wearily. Not 5. You should have protected your family. But you chose Mommy. Now live with her. And with Tiffany, if she picks you up after me. She turned to leave, but Marcus grabbed her hand. You can't take the kids, panic laced his voice. They're mine too. Don't worry, Sarah freed her hand. I'm not going to stop you from seeing them. Unlike some, I understand that kids need a father. But we will live separately, and that's not up for discussion. You're filing for divorce? Marcus went pale. Yes, Marcus. I'm filing for divorce, Sarah said, surprised herself at how easily the words slipped off her lips, as if they'd been waiting all this time to be spoken. I won't claim your money. I won't cause a scandal. I just want to start life over, without you. And especially without your mother. Sarah, let's at least talk, he tried. We already talked, she cut him off. And now it's time for me to go. The kids are waiting. She left the apartment, closing the door behind her. In the elevator, Mia and Dave looked at her with concern. Isn't Dad coming with us? Dave asked. No, sweetheart, Sarah patted her son's head. Dad has a lot of work. He'll come visit you later. As they got into the car, Sarah felt a strange relief. It was as if the heavy backpack she had carried on her shoulders for so many years had suddenly disappeared. For the first time in a long time, she could breathe freely. Where are we going, Mom? Mia asked as they drove out of the yard. Toward a new life, sweetie, Sarah replied, smiling through tears. Toward a new life. The phone rang again. This time it wasn't Nancy, but Paula, the realtor. I found an option for you, she said. A 2-bedroom apartment in a new building, nicely renovated, fully furnished. $2,300, but I think the owner will agree to $2,000. Wonderful, Sarah felt the tension leaving her body. When can we see it? Right now, Paula replied. The owner is here, waiting. We're on our way. Sarah wrote down the address and changed her route. 20 minutes later, they were riding the elevator up in a modern residential complex. The apartment was bright and spacious, with a large kitchen and 2 separate rooms. From the balcony, there was a view of the playground. Is this going to be our new room? Dave asked, peeking into the bedroom with 2 beds. Yes, if you like it, Sarah answered. It's great here. Mia was already jumping on the bed. Look at these beautiful curtains. Sarah looked at the children, at their excited faces, and realized she had made the right decision. They deserved a home where they were loved and valued, where they didn't have to fear Grandma's criticism or Dad's silent agreement with it. We'll take it, she told the owner. Can we move in today? Of course, the woman smiled. I'll prepare the contract right away. While the documents were being processed, Sarah took the children to the nearest supermarket. They stocked up on groceries, bought new toothbrushes, shampoo, soap, everything they would need for the first few days. Does Dad know where our new home is? Dave asked as they returned from shopping. He'll find out when he comes to visit, Sarah replied, not wanting to involve the children in all the details. That evening, after putting the children to bed in the new apartment, Sarah sat on the balcony with a cup of tea. Her phone showed 20 missed calls from Marcus and a dozen messages. She didn't read them. Instead, she sent a short text. "The children are fine. We are safe. Do not look for us. I will contact you when I'm ready to discuss visitation schedules." Then she blocked his number. And Betty's number too, just in case. The night was sleepless. The children, and used to the new place, woke several times. Mia cried, asking about Dad. Dave fussed, demanding his familiar crib. But by morning, they all finally slept soundly. Sarah sat in the kitchen, watching the dawn break outside the window. She thought about what she had done, the broken table, the ruined celebration, Marcus's face when she slapped him. She regretted none of it. For the first time in 5 years, she felt real, alive, not a shadow, not an appendage to Mommy's boy, not a perpetually apologizing daughter-in-law. She was Sarah again, a strong woman who knew her worth and would not let anyone, even her closest family, destroy her dignity. "Mom, I'm thirsty." Sleepy Dave appeared in the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. Sarah poured him some water and ruffled his messy hair. "You know what, little one? Today we're going to the zoo, and then for ice cream at a cafe. And tonight we'll watch any cartoon you want. How's that plan?" "Awesome." Dave grinned widely. "Will Dad come with us?" Sarah's smile faltered slightly. "No, sweetie, Dad is busy today. But I'm sure he'll take you to the zoo next time." Dave nodded and ran to wake his sister to share the good news. Sarah finished her cold tea and thought about the long and difficult path ahead: divorce, division of property, arranging visitation with the children. But now, on this May morning, she felt strong enough to face it all with her head held high. Because she had finally shed the burden of a fake family and taken a step toward a real life. A life in which she and her children would be happy, no matter what. The first week in the new apartment flew by in a blur. Sarah was spinning like a squirrel in a wheel, getting the children settled in their new kindergarten, urgently looking for work, trying to get the household running in the new place, all while hiding from the children how difficult it was for her. At night, when Mia and Dave were fast asleep in their room, she sat in the kitchen with her laptop, sending out resumes and counting their meager savings. Marcus did not stop trying to contact her. When he realized his number was blocked, he started writing from his work phone, then from unknown numbers. At first, the messages were full of remorse and pleas for forgiveness, then threats of court and taking the children. The latter particularly frightened Sarah, but she tried to stay calm. On the 10th day, Sarah finally decided to answer one of his calls. "I want to see the children," Marcus said without greeting when she picked up the phone. "Hello, Marcus," Sarah replied calmly. "I don't mind you seeing the children. They miss you. Then why did you take them away?" His voice was tinged with hurt. "Why don't you give the address?" "Mom says, you're just punishing me for the stop." Sarah felt anger rising inside her again. "Let's get one thing straight. I don't want to hear what your mother says, ever. And if you want to see the children, you'll have to follow my rules." "What rules?" Marcus was clearly taken aback by her tone. "First, no Betty near my children, under any circumstances," Sarah said firmly, though inside she was trembling. "Second, visits only in public places. A park, cafe, cinema, anything, but not at our home or yours. You can't forbid the children from seeing their grandmother," Marcus protested. "She has rights." "She lost those rights when she called her own grandchildren brats and kicked them out," Sarah cut him off. "And don't try to pressure me with the law. I've already consulted a lawyer." It was true. While looking for a job, Sarah had come across a vacancy for an administrator at a law firm specializing in family law. She was hired almost immediately, with a start date in a week. The first thing she did was get a free consultation with one of the firm's attorneys. "What about child support?" Marcus asked after a pause. "You said you wouldn't claim my money, but now it seems you've changed your mind." "I'm not claiming your money," Sarah replied. "But the children are entitled to financial support from both parents, so yes, there will be child support." "And how much do you want?" "By law, 25% of your income for the two children." There was silence on the other end. Sarah imagined Marcus mentally calculating the amount and realizing he would have to significantly cut his expenses. "Fine," he finally said. "When can I see the children?" "This Saturday," Sarah suggested. "At the amusement park." "I'll be there," Marcus agreed. After the call, Sarah sat for a long time, her hands on her head. She hadn't expected it to be so hard to just talk to someone she had lived with for many years, as if an invisible wall of pain, resentment, and misunderstanding had grown between them. The new job turned out to be a lifesaver. The team at the law firm was small but friendly. The young owner, Gwen, an energetic woman in her early 40s, immediately took a liking to Sarah. "I also went through a difficult divorce," she admitted over lunch on Sarah's first day. "So I understand what you're going through. If you need help, don't hesitate to ask." Sarah nodded gratefully, unable to utter a word. Support, even from a near stranger, was priceless in her situation. The work schedule was convenient, 9 to 5, which allowed Sarah to pick up the children from kindergarten herself. The salary was modest, but together with the promised child support, it should cover the basic expenses. At least, she hoped it would. On Saturday, getting the children ready to meet their father, Sarah felt mixed emotions. On one hand, she knew the children needed their dad. On the other, she feared Marcus might try to turn them against her or find out where they lived. "Mom, why doesn't Dad live with us?" Mia asked as Sarah braided her hair. "I've explained, sweetie," Sarah replied gently. "Sometimes adults can't live together, even if they really love their children. But Dad loves us, right?" Doubt was in the little girl's voice. "Of course he does." Sarah felt a lump rise in her throat. "He loves you very, very much. That's why today you'll have a wonderful time together. Aren't you coming with us?" Dave asked, struggling with the buttons on his shirt. "No, sweetie," Sarah crouched to help him. "I have a few errands to run. But in the evening we'll meet, and you can tell me all about your day." The amusement park was crowded. The May holiday weekend was warm, and many people chose to spend it outdoors. Sarah saw Marcus from a distance. He was standing at the entrance, nervously checking his watch. In his hands were two enormous stuffed bears, one pink, one blue. "Daddy!" The children squealed and ran to him the moment they saw him. Marcus knelt, arms open, and Sarah saw his face light up at the sight of the children. His eyes sparkled, lips curved into a genuine smile. He hugged Mia and Dave tightly, then handed them the bears, saying something cheerfully. The children laughed, hugging their new toys. "I'll wait for them here at 6, Sarah said, stepping closer. Marcus looked up at her, and his smile faded slightly. "Fine," he nodded. "Don't worry, I'll take care of them." "I know," Sarah tried to smile. "Mia, Dave, listen to your dad and don't run away from him, okay?" The children nodded, already losing interest in the adults' conversation. The carousels and rides were calling them. "Let's go, Daddy, I want to ride the funny octopus." Mia tugged at her father's hand. "Me too." "Me too." Dave chimed in. Marcus cast one last glance at Sarah. There was something like regret in his eyes, and then he let the children lead him deeper into the park. Sarah watched them go, feeling a strange emptiness inside. 6 years ago, she had been certain that she and Marcus would build a strong, loving family, that they would take the children to parks together, throw celebrations, grow old hand in hand. What went wrong? When did she allow that woman, Betty, to come between them? Sighing, Sarah turned away and headed toward the subway. She had a few hours of free time, a luxury she hadn't allowed herself since moving. She could go to the movies, shop, or just sit in a cafe with a book. But instead, Sarah decided to meet a friend she hadn't seen in a couple of weeks. Nancy was waiting for her at a small cafe near the park. They hugged, and suddenly Sarah felt tears streaming down her cheeks. Hey, hang in there, friend, Nancy patted her on the back. You've already been through the hardest part, now it's just forward. I know, Sarah wiped her tears with a napkin. It just hits me sometimes. They ordered coffee and pastries. Sarah told her everything that had happened over the past 2 weeks, the new apartment, the job, the conversation with Marcus. And what about the divorce? Nancy asked, stirring sugar into her cup. Have you filed yet? Not yet, Sarah shook her head. I want to make sure the children are okay first. Marcus promised to transfer the first payment on Monday. And you trust him? Nancy raised an eyebrow skeptically. I don't know, Sarah admitted. I would have said yes without thinking before, but now, she shrugged. And the kids? They ask about him. Constantly, Sarah sighed. Especially Mia. She's always been Daddy's little girl. Dave handles it easier, he's more attached to me. Children adapt, Nancy said confidently. The main thing is that you and Marcus don't drag them into your conflicts. Trust my experience. Nancy was also divorced and raising a son alone. Her ex-husband had moved to another city, started a new family, and barely showed interest in their child. She had been through everything that now awaited Sarah, and her advice was invaluable. Thank you for supporting me, Sarah said, squeezing her friend's hand. I couldn't do it without you. Nonsense, you're stronger than you think, Nancy winked. Remember how you smashed the table at your mother-in-law's summer house? I'd give a lot to see that again. They both laughed, and Sarah felt the tension of the past days ease a little. Maybe Nancy was right? Maybe she really was stronger than she thought. In the evening, exactly at 6, Sarah waited at the park entrance. More people had arrived, and she anxiously scanned the crowd, trying to spot familiar figures. At 6:15, her phone rang. We're running a little late, Marcus said. Dave wanted one more ride on the carousel, and then we stopped at the ice cream cafe. We'll be there in about 20 minutes. Okay, Sarah tried not to show irritation. I'll wait. 25 minutes later, she spotted them. Marcus was carrying Dave on his shoulders, who looked completely exhausted. Mia, holding her father's hand, was barely keeping up beside him. Both children clutched balloons and stuffed bears. Hi. Marcus carefully lifted his son off his shoulders and set him on the ground. Sorry we're late. We got a little carried away. It's okay. Sarah crouched to hug the children. So, did you have fun? Awesome. Dave exclaimed, instantly perking up. Daddy took us on all the rides and bought cotton candy and ice cream 3 times. I see. Sarah smiled, noticing the traces of chocolate ice cream on her son's t-shirt. Why are you so quiet, Mia? I'm tired, the girl replied softly, leaning against her mother. I want to go home. We'll go soon. Sarah stroked her head. Thank you for a wonderful day, she said to Marcus. He nodded, clearly unsure of what to say. Then he suddenly remembered. Wait, I wanted to talk to you alone. Sarah hesitated. The children did look tired, especially Mia, pale and quiet. Let's do it another time, she said. We need to get the kids to bed soon. It's important, Marcus insisted. Just 5 minutes, no more. Sarah sighed. All right. She took out her phone and turned on a cartoon. Mia, Dave, sit quietly on the bench while your dad and I talk. We'll be right here. The children, absorbed in the cartoon, obediently nodded. Stepping a few paces away but staying within sight, Sarah turned to Marcus. I'm listening. I want you to come back, he said without preamble. I miss you, all of you. Sarah looked at him, unable to believe her ears. This wasn't the conversation she had been prepared for. Marcus, she began cautiously, we can't just pretend nothing happened. Too much has happened. I know. He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture she once found so charming. I've rethought a lot over these days, realized how wrong I behaved, how I let my mother interfere in our lives. And what's changed? Sarah crossed her arms over her chest. Marcus faltered. I talked to her. Told her I won't tolerate that treatment toward you and the kids anymore. And what did she say? Sarah couldn't hide her skepticism. First, she got angry, then she cried, then she said she understood and was ready to apologize to you. Sarah laughed bitterly, without joy. Marcus, in 6 years your mother has never once apologized to me, even when she was obviously wrong. And you really think something has changed now? People can change, he said stubbornly, especially when they risk losing what's most precious. And what's most precious to her? Sarah asked directly. You or your children? Marcus was silent, unable to answer, and that silence spoke louder than words. Listen, Sarah softened her tone. I appreciate that you're trying to fix things. Truly, I do, but I can't come back. I've started a new life. I have a job, an apartment, the kids are getting used to the new kindergarten. She took a deep breath. I'm filing for divorce on Monday. No. Marcus went pale. Please, don't do this. Let's at least try, for the kids' sake. For the kids' sake is exactly why I left, Sarah said firmly. I don't want them to grow up in a family where the mother is humiliated and the father allows it. What kind of example is that for them? I will change, I promise. Desperation was in his voice. I've already changed. Forgive me for what happened at the cottage. I was confused, didn't know what to do. You knew, Sarah interrupted quietly. You just chose your mother over us. And now I'm choosing myself and the children. She glanced at the bench where Mia and Dave were sitting. They were still watching the cartoon, but Mia looked very pale. It's time for us to go, Sarah said. The children were tired. When can I see them again? Marcus asked, realizing he had lost this round. Next Saturday, if you want, at the same time in the same place. All right, he nodded. And about the child support, I transferred the money today. Check your card. Thank you. Sarah was surprised. She hadn't expected him to fulfill the promise so quickly. Sarah? Marcus suddenly took her hand. Please, think it over again. She gently freed her hand. Goodbye, Marcus. See you next Saturday. At home, Sarah first measured Mia's temperature, 38. 2 degrees Celsius. The girl had a fever. She complained of a sore throat and refused dinner. She probably caught a cold on the carousel, Sarah sighed, tucking her daughter into bed. I'll give you medicine now, and you'll feel better. Mom, will Dad come to see me? Mia asked weakly. Not today, sweetie, Sarah stroked her head. But I'm sure he'll call to check on you. She gave her daughter fever medicine, made raspberry and honey tea, and placed a compress on her forehead. When Mia finally fell asleep, Sarah checked her phone. Marcus had indeed transferred the money, even more than she had expected, and sent a message. If you need anything, call any time. She didn't reply, took her laptop, and opened the court website to fill out the divorce petition form. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Was she doing the right thing? Maybe she should give their relationship another chance for the children's sake. But then she remembered Betty's face, saying, No spots. Go home with your brats. She remembered how Marcus silently passed by his children, choosing comfort and his mother's approval. How she endured humiliation trying to please a woman who never considered her worthy of her son. Nodding decisively, Sarah began filling out the form. The night was difficult. Mia's fever rose to 39.3 degrees Celsius, and she babbled in her sleep, calling for her dad. Sarah stayed by her bedside, changing compresses and giving her medicine. By morning, the fever had slightly subsided, but the girl was still very weak. We need to call a doctor, Sarah decided, seeing her daughter's red throat. She called the clinic and requested a pediatrician to come to the house. Then she called her boss to let her know she couldn't come to work. Of course, stay with your child, Gwen immediately agreed. Health comes first. Get well soon. After hanging up, her phone rang again. Marcus' name appeared on the screen. How are the kids? He asked instead of a greeting. Are they all right? Mia has a high fever and a sore throat, Sarah answered. I called the doctor. What? Marcus sounded alarmed. Why didn't you tell me? I'll come. No need, Sarah said firmly. I can handle it. It's just tonsillitis. Nothing serious. She's my daughter, his voice carried stubbornness. I have the right to be there when she's sick. Sarah sighed. He was right, but she least of all wanted to see him in her new apartment. It was her refuge, her territory, free from her past life. All right, she agreed reluctantly. But only you, no one else. I'll come alone, Marcus promised. Give me the address, he asked. Sarah dictated the address, and an hour later Marcus was ringing the doorbell. He brought a huge bag of fruit, juice, new toys for the children, and a large box of medicine. I didn't know what you had or didn't have, so I brought everything that might be useful, he explained, taking off his shoes in the hallway. How is she? He asked. Her temperature is 38.5 degrees Celsius, Sarah replied. The doctor hasn't arrived yet. She's in the bedroom, sleeping. Marcus tiptoed into the children's room. Mia was indeed asleep, her face flushed from the fever. Next to her, hugging a teddy bear, Dave was snoring softly. He had refused to leave his sister's side and had lain down to watch over her sleep. Marcus faltered, at a loss for words. I know, Sarah whispered. Let's go to the kitchen so we don't wake them. In the kitchen, Marcus looked around. Sarah noticed a change in his expression when he saw the small but cozy space she had made her own, floral curtains, children's drawings on the fridge, pots of greenery on the windowsill. It's lovely here, he said, his voice tinged with surprise. Thank you, Sarah replied, putting on the kettle. We're trying to make it comfortable. I can see that, Marcus said, sitting at the table. You've always been good at creating a cozy home. They sipped tea in awkward silence when the doorbell rang. The doctor had arrived. A typical viral infection, said the elderly pediatrician after the examination. Many children are sick right now. Nothing serious, but keep an eye on the temperature. If it goes above 39 degrees Celsius, call an ambulance and give her plenty to drink. She wrote a prescription for antiviral medication and a throat rinse, reassured the parents once more, and left. See? Nothing serious, Marcus said once they were alone again. But I still want to stay with her, Sarah said. Of course, she nodded. You're her father. The July sun beat down mercilessly as Sarah walked out of the courthouse holding a folder of documents. She squinted against the bright light and took a deep breath. The divorce process was complete. Officially, she was no longer married. So, a free woman? Nancy approached, waiting on a bench near the courthouse. Almost, Sarah smiled weakly, waving the documents. The decision takes effect in a month, but the main thing, it's all behind me. The court session had gone surprisingly smoothly. Marcus didn't contest any part of the agreement, neither the child support amount nor the schedule of visits with the children. The only thing he requested was the occasional overnight stay with the kids. Sarah agreed, though with one condition: no Betty on those days. Shall we celebrate your freedom? Nancy suggested. I have lunch break right now. Better tomorrow. Sarah rubbed her temples tiredly. I still need to pick up the kids from daycare and prepare dinner. Marcus is taking them for the weekend, and I want everything ready. Has he rented an apartment already? Nancy asked, walking her friend to the bus stop. Yes, a 2-bedroom not far from work, Sarah nodded. He says he set up the kids' room first class. Over the 2 months since their separation, much had changed. Sarah had fully settled into her new job and even received a small promotion. The children adapted to their new life, went to daycare, and made friends in the neighborhood. Mia, having recovered from the viral infection, was now healthy and cheerful, though she still occasionally asked why they didn't live with their father. The relationship with Marcus had become calmer and more balanced. The first month had been the hardest. He alternated between begging her to return, threatening court, and sending flowers with notes of eternal love, but gradually he accepted reality, especially when he realized that Sarah wasn't preventing his relationship with the children and genuinely wanted him to remain a good father. Betty tried to interfere a few times, calling from unknown numbers, once even ambushing Sarah at work, shouting that her daughter-in-law had ruined her son's family, and threatening to sue for custody of the grandchildren. But Sarah remained firm. No contact with her mother-in-law. You know she won't give up, Nancy said as they reached the bus stop. People like your mother-in-law never admit defeat. I know, Sarah grimaced. But I won't let her poison our lives anymore, not mine, not the children's. Exactly. Nancy hugged her friend goodbye. Stay strong. And remember, you made the best choice for yourself and the kids. On the way to daycare, Sarah reflected on everything that had happened over the past months. Sometimes it seemed as if that scene at the cottage had happened in another life, to another woman. The image of herself overturning the table and throwing kebabs at her husband still stirred mixed feelings: shame, satisfaction, surprise. She had never considered herself capable of such actions. And yet, that moment, this sudden eruption of long-suppressed anger, became the turning point of her life. It was as if everything had been building up for years: resentment, humiliation, disappointment, and suddenly it burst like a dam. Mommy! Mia ran to her as soon as she saw her at the doorway of the classroom. Look what I drew. Sarah crouched down to look at the drawing. 4 little figures holding hands. Mom, Dad, a girl, a boy. This is our family, Mia explained proudly. We don't live together, but we still love each other. Sarah's heart tightened. Even at 5, her daughter understood the situation better than many adults, including her own grandmother. That's very beautiful, Sarah said, kissing the top of her daughter's head. And where's Dave? He's getting ready in the locker room, Mia replied. She took her mother's hand. Come on, I'll show you what we did in class. In the evening, after putting the children to bed, Sarah packed their things for the trip with their father. Marcus was supposed to pick them up tomorrow after lunch and bring them back Sunday evening. It would be their first overnight stay with him, and Sarah felt a little nervous. Her phone vibrated. A message from Marcus. Don't forget to pack Mia's unicorn nightlight and Dave's plush bunny, and their favorite bedtime book. Sarah smiled. Despite all the problems, Marcus remained a caring father. He remembered all the little details that made the children happy. This was the part of him she still respected and valued. Got it, don't worry, she replied. After putting away her phone, Sarah stepped out onto the small balcony. The summer evening was warm and quiet, broken only occasionally by children laughing on the playground below. She looked at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky and thought about how much her life had changed over these months. Had there been moments when she regretted her decision? Yes, of course. especially at night, when the bed felt empty and lonely, when the children asked why their father didn't live with them, or when she saw happy families in the park. But there were other moments, when she fell asleep without that knot of anxiety in her stomach, knowing she wouldn't have to endure her mother-in-law's cutting remarks tomorrow, that she could buy the children what she deemed necessary without fear of criticism. When she looked at herself in the mirror, she didn't see a beaten down, constantly apologizing woman, but a confident, self-assured person. Yes, the price of freedom had been high, but it was worth it. Sometimes, to find happiness, toxic relationships must be let go. And she had done exactly that.